Previously on Demystifying the Transgender Journey.
And I was like, nope, not going to happen. Not going to do that. It was summer of 2006. I said, I'm not going to transition. It's dealt with, it's cared for. I thought I could beat it. Ignoring your problems is the absolute worst thing you can do. I started creating like stories in my head that had me being a girl, and something happens and I'd have to create a new one, and the new one would get more and more details. I would get bored with one and I feel this tightness in my chest. Something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. It's because the dysphoria is coming in. That panic, that depression, that anxiety starts settling in. So I would have to come up with another one. And I started adding hobbies. I got into reenacting. I was a Civil War reenactor for a little while. And these are hobbies that are very, very involved, very detailed. There's a lot going on. So there's a lot of things for me to sit there and, turn my mind to. I don't have time to think about the dysphoria. Then comes COVID.
What do you really know about people who were born transgender? Have you ever met someone who's transgender? Well, if you're like me, you're curious but hesitant to ask questions. Well, welcome to Demystifying the Transgender Journey. In our conversations with people who were born transgender, their families, friends, and the professionals who support them, we ask probing questions and discover insightful and educational answers. You can also find more information on our website, thetransgenderjourney.com. Now let's get right into today's episode. Welcome to another episode of Demystifying the Transgender Journey. We're glad you're here. This is a place where honest, in-depth conversations about humanity take place with people who were born transgender, their families, friends, coworkers, and the healthcare professionals who are on that journey with them. I'm Lynn Murphy, author, speaker, leadership coach, and founder of Women Who Push the Limits, and I'm the cisgender half of your host team today. Joining me is the amazing Wendy Cole, a gender diversity consultant and speaker who provides her knowledge and her lived experience to city and state agencies, businesses, and organizations, helping them navigate the ever-evolving social issues that are going on today in society by providing education and training on transgender and LGBTQ issues. Wendy transitioned at 67 years old and is living proof that it's never too late to embrace your true self. Our goal with our podcast is to educate people by humanizing the transgender experience. And together we bring you conversations that open minds, touch hearts, and hopefully inspire change. So share these stories with those who are ready to learn more about the transgender experience. And today on Demystifying the Transgender Journey, we're continuing our conversation with Krystal Franqui. This is part 2 of the conversation that we aired in a previous episode. Just to remind you who she is, she's a woman whose story takes you from small-town childhood to aircraft carriers and through a lifelong search for an explanation that finally made everything make sense. Krystal is a 42-year-old woman who affirmed her gender 4.5 years ago. She's been married for 15 years, is a parent of 2 adult children, and has known since an early childhood what it feels like to be different. First through a neurodivergent diagnosis, and later through official diagnosis of gender dysphoria. She tried to outrun that reality by doing things to prove her manhood and constantly trying to find herself to a mold that never ever fit her. So today she's chosen something very powerful. Instead of going stealth, Krystal is choosing visibility, using her voice, her creativity, her brilliance, and her love for helping other people to offer guidance to the transgender community and to educate the public. So settle in for an enlightening conversation, part 2, with Krystal Franqui.
Then comes COVID. So I mentioned I had graduated nursing school. I went to nursing school. I graduated in 2009 as a nurse. Never got my license for a variety of things. Big one being, New York State, fumbling my tuition assistance. But my wife ended up going to the same nursing school 10 years later and graduated, and she was a nurse during COVID. And I was a pharmacy blending technician, working for a pharmaceutical company, actually blending together the ingredients that make the final product. So I was working with, controlled substances and all sorts of stuff as my job. And I did that job for 5 years. I was good at it. But the best part was I had a lot of time where I could be by myself in my
Mhm.
head, and I could just be in my own world, and doing these things. And we were under incredible stress. We were both mandated employees. We could not take time off.
Mhm.
And one day I was doing something, it was very benign. It was cleaning a room after we had done a run. So you take a hose and you're hosing down the walls. And it's very simple, very easy part of the job. And I suddenly had a total mental breakdown. I just completely came apart at the seams. I'm on the floor, curled up in a ball. I'm crying. I'm sobbing. I'm hyperventilating. I can't think straight. If you had asked me my name, I probably couldn't have even spit out my name because I was just so distraught and I couldn't understand why. Where did all this come from? At the time, I was having problems with my relationships with my wife and my kids because my little mental stories were no longer being effective.
Mhm.
And I was getting aggravated. I would come home from work, like the whole drive home, I'm like in my story. I get home, I come in the door, and now I'm being distracted from my imagination. My kids want my attention. My
Right.
wife needs my attention. I have to run a house. I have to take care of the kids. And that's distracting me from my story, which I need in order to survive. It's like being on that nicotine high for a smoker. I'm irritable and it's getting bad. And
Mhm.
so I was starting to emotionally pull away from my family. I was pulling away from my wife, my kids, and I loved my kids more than anything else in the world. I love my kids. I love my wife. But the moment I would get home, I would just be annoyed for no reason. And we were fighting more and it was getting bad. And so, clearly something wasn't working. I was getting more and more panicked. The depression was getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And I felt like I was going to get too close to that event horizon and I was going to fall in. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get out of it. Um, so finally, I had these two panic attacks. Same thing happened second time. I was cleaning and I just kind of completely come apart at the seams. And security was so worried about me that they weren't sure they wanted to let me drive myself home. That's how distraught I was. They said, "We're not sure if you're safe to
Wow.
drive yourself home. We might have to call your wife to come get you." And this was like 40 minutes away from home in the
Wow.
middle of the night.
Mhm.
So I got home, had another argument with my wife, and I'm finally like, I need counseling. I need therapy. I'm just give me a chance to get into therapy. So I went through and I looked for therapy. I found a family therapist who just happened to have, some experience with LGBTQ people. That's not what she specialized in. She was a family therapist, but she did know a little bit. And I had this huge, long 3 paragraph, this is about me thing that I sent her
Mhm.
and talked about short temper, issues with my mom, and all these other
Mhm.
things. And one sentence in the very, very bottom, at the very bottom of paragraph number 3, I might be transgender.
Mhm.
Very, very bottom, one sentence. And I'm a very honest person. My wife asked me what I said, and I told her, and I mentioned that last sentence, and she got upset, saying, that's exactly, she's going to key into that, and that she's going to say you're trans. And I'm like, I'm being honest. If you want help, you have to be honest, right?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense to me not to.
Exactly.
And I said, I'm just being honest. And it's like one sentence. All this other stuff, it's one sentence.
Right.
Is that the
She,
first time you had said that out loud or put it in writing?
to a licensed therapist, yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but you said it
So,
to yourself.
well, I mean, I said it because I was still like, it might be a pretty good possibility after 2 major breakdowns, you know,
Exactly.
and
And you are right. You do need to be honest and open in
yes,
order to get
Mhm.
that kind of help.
I genuinely was hoping that I was just had anger issues, that my ADD was maybe I wasn't on medication for my ADD. I hadn't been on meds for ADD since high school. So how I
Mhm.
got through the Navy training, I was on top of my class in training there. I was top of my class in nursing. I was top of my class for aircraft maintenance, and I did it all without Ritalin.
Right.
No
Wow.
idea how. But I thought maybe that's what's going on and this will help. And I wanted to show my wife that I was actually trying to do better. I was trying to fix this. I was trying because
Right.
I'm a very methodical person. I believe that there's a reason for things happening, and if I can find out what's wrong, I can fix it.
Exactly.
So my first appointment with my therapist comes up, and we do initial introductions, and I start talking about my mom problems because that was something that was kind of hot at that time. And she said, "I don't want to talk about that. What's this about you being trans?" It's like,
Right to it.
Uh-huh.
oh my God,
Well,
what have I
that is the
done?
issue.
Yeah, we ended up that, and my wife was right. That's all she wanted to talk about. And she just kept drilling and drilling and drilling. And I was
Good.
talking to her for 4 months, and I'm like, so what do you think is the issue? Like, yeah, you've already got a diagnosis for gender dysphoria. I don't know why you're still asking this because I think it's been pretty clear, and it's like people think that it's so simple for us to just walk in and say these things. I fought my entire life. I was 37 years old when I had those two breakdowns. It was April of 2021. I pushed and fought for years to not be trans. I suffered. I did everything I could to avoid transitioning, putting
Mhm.
myself and my family through absolute misery, you know, and it did not work. And it could have been a lot worse. My wife,
Mhm.
when she found out, I told her obviously, and she was very upset. Lots of tears, just lots of arguing, demanding to know what I'm going to do about it. And I'm like, I don't know. But in August of that year, I started hormones. We figured, well, the definitive decision is going to be definitely taking hormones because if you're not, I knew this from nursing school. Men who have low testosterone have a bunch of specific things that they suffer from. You have low energy, you feel fatigued, you feel just lethargic, not yourself. You feel just a general wrongness. And that's why we give testosterone to men who are either going through aging issues or certain medical procedures like enlarged prostate. They'll give medications for it that suppress testosterone. Well, if you're a trans woman, I'm not going to react that way to losing testosterone.
Mhm.
So 3 months on estrogen kind of gave us a hint that I was happier. I
Oh,
was
wow.
more cheerful. I was
Uh-huh.
not moody. I was laughing all the time. I wasn't angry. The depression, anxiety was fading out. I was not spending as
Exactly.
much time in my head. Like all
Mhm.
the time I spent making up stories, I wasn't doing that anymore.
Right. You
Um,
became the story yourself.
yeah, I mean, the big thing was like one of our really big fights my wife and I got into a few years before that is we were looking to possibly move out of New York. And I didn't want to move where she wanted to go because I wouldn't be able to do my reenacting. My
Oh.
reenacting was my distraction.
Mhm.
So
Right.
the thought of going somewhere where I couldn't do that was panic inducing. And I remember just feeling this unreasonable panic over not being able to do my hobby.
Mm.
I didn't feel that need anymore. That was gone.
Mhm.
I
Oh.
enjoy it, but I didn't need it to breathe.
Right.
And that's when we're like, okay, no, this is legitimate. This is real. My relationship was improving with my wife, with my kids. I was doing better at work. Although I was no longer working there by the time I was really had been
Right.
on for a full 3 months. That was actually the first job I lost for coming out as trans.
Well, so you came out at work?
I was in therapy. I just started hormones in August, and I came out to HR in September, late September, and then they let me go a week or so later on some made up issues. Like I went from being one of the top performing employees, the assistant training manager for what I was doing, to being, a horrible employee that had to be let go of. And
So
it's
it was
like
something made up.
it was something made up. It was like if I had gone after them, like the paperwork would not have
Mhm.
supported their reason for letting me go. But New York is, if either the employer or employee can separate at any time for any reason,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's what happened. But um,
Hmm.
things started improving everywhere else,
So your wife
and
noticed a change?
she noticed the change. It was hard for her because she's like, I'm not a lesbian.
Right,
And you told her you
exactly.
weren't going to do this.
And I told her I wasn't going to do this. She was very mad at me. She's like, well, first it's going to be hormones, and then it's going to be surgeries, and then it's going to be this, that, and the third. And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, I can't
Now,
live a lie anymore.
and
And
now that you started,
that's,
you can't stop.
I can't stop because what I found is that through therapy and going on HRT, I started peeling back layers of the
Mhm.
mask. And I started learning what I had been put up. I created a lot of those original filters to protect
Mhm.
myself, to
Right.
protect that 6-year-old version
And
of me that got shoved in a closet. Eventually, more filters got put in place that I wasn't even aware of.
mhm.
And now I've been transitioning now for 4.5 years, and I'm finding things that I didn't even realize were a thing.
Mhm.
And it's like being denied who you are at the most basic
Mhm.
level. And now here you are. Most people age 6 to age 42 get to figure out who they are. You
Mhm.
go through primary school, you go through secondary education, you go through those early years in the workforce. You find out what you like, who you are, what your opinions are. You form that version of you, who you really are. And when you're trans and you've been in the closet, you don't get that chance.
Absolutely. For repressing your whole personality.
Yes.
I did the same exact thing.
And I wasn't even aware of how bad it was happening. I knew a lot of it, but I didn't know all of it. And the thing is that one of the things that kept me from transitioning was the fear of losing people. Like I said, I was afraid of losing my mom, my grandmother. I was later afraid of losing my kids and my wife. And um, it really came down to, what am I going to lose for real? If I continue the way I was, my wife said about 4 months into HRT, she's like, if you hadn't started transitioning, we were going to be divorced because that's how bad things were getting.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, I was a miserable person. I was depressed. I was upset. I was pulling away. I was constantly irritable.
Mm-hmm.
And once I accepted that I was trans, once I started that transition, I'm laughing constantly. I am
Mm-hmm.
enjoying being around people.
Right.
I'm crying. That was one of the things that I was never able to do once puberty really set in. I lost
Oh
that
yeah.
ability to cry, and I don't think people realize how important it is to be able to
Mhm.
cry,
It is.
you know?
Yes.
And it's like I can now react to things the way that I want to react, or the way it's natural for me. I want to be able to watch Pride and Prejudice and cry at the same scenes and get upset at the same scenes that my wife does in the same way without being looked at like, why are you upset about Colin Firth wandering off in the rain? I mean, and it's like the more I accepted that this is who I really am, the more I allowed myself to be, the happier I got.
So this is
And it's
normal for
like,
you.
right. And it's like,
This is who you are.
I remember worrying because a lot of people say, I mean, I'm in a lot of forums. I do a lot of like answers there for people. I like helping out. And one of the questions I get is, is my partner going to become a whole different person? And I'm like, HRT does not really make you a different person. Okay, by the time you've decided to take it, you've probably done a lot of self-reflection and pulling things out, and you kind of start learning about yourself. But it doesn't do it. It's that mental work that you're doing, figuring out what was I doing just to prove to the world that I wasn't trans, or that I was a
Exactly.
full guy, or was a full woman. I mean, trans men
Mm-hmm.
having that same issue where they try to do, the ultra model and super femme thing, and then they finally come out and they're going full on, gym bro. It's the level that we will go to try to protect ourselves. We don't even realize how far we're going.
So
Right.
you're
And
peeling away pieces of that mask, aren't you?
right, I risked losing my wife.
Hmm.
True. That's true. I risked losing her by transitioning. She wasn't sure she was going to stay, and she would have been completely justified if she wanted to go. And she may
Mm-hmm.
still go. We don't know. Things are going really, really well, but that's a possibility. But if I didn't transition, I would have lost her and I would have lost myself because that level of depression was not going anywhere good.
Right.
Hmm.
And no amount of medication was going to change that either.
Antidepressants are not going to touch it. You cannot live your life treating the symptoms and not treating the disease. And that was the problem. The disease needed to be treated. And well, not disease. I really, that's really not what
Right.
this is, but it's like the cause of the symptoms needs
Right.
to be treated. And in this case, it was accepting that I was trans. It was transitioning as far as I need to go for myself. And it has gone incredibly well, all things considered, you know, the way the world's going right now. But I've been very, very fortunate. My wife is very supportive. My kids are very supportive, which they were 14 and 15 when I first said I was going to transition. And that was really scary because my wife was like, this is what we're going to do to decide whether or not you're going to be able to transition if the kids are okay with it. She wanted me to wait till they graduated college. And I remember thinking,
You
I'm
wouldn't have
never going
made
to,
it.
I'm not going to survive that long, but I'll agree if this is what we need to do, you know. But she's like, okay, tell you what, we'll compromise. We'll see what the kids think. If they are okay with it, then you can transition. And I think she was hoping that they would be like, Dad, please don't. Called them in and we told them. My son, who's the older one by 11 months, said, okay, so whatever. Can I go back and play video games now? Because it's like, whatever, dad, mom, whatever I'm gonna call you, I don't care, whatever. He was just like totally unaffected. And my daughter, who's the younger of the two, was like, this is so cool. That's so awesome. And I'm just like, that was not on my bingo card. I did not. That's not what I was expecting because I'd never discussed anything like that. We never discussed those topics. I raised my kids to be accepting of everyone. I have family members who are gay. I have a cousin who is a trans man, never transitioned, but is a trans man. But I had never discussed being the stuff in front of them or with them or in their or within earshot. So it was kind of a shock that my youngest was like, yay, you know, but it was very positive, and that's where my wife's like, okay, go ahead, give it a try. We'll see how it goes. Um, so I was lucky with them. I came out to my mom, I want to say a year later. I actually went out to visit her, and I was already on hormones for about 2 weeks at the time. But I was scared. I was very scared. I was terrified. You know, even at I was 38. I was like, even at 38, I'm terrified of losing my mom. My mom is still my person, you know. And it turns out, she's like, love is unconditional. And I'm not gonna lose you for anything. You know, I don't care. And she ended up being very accepting. My sister was very accepting.
I'm so
And
happy for you.
my stepdad was very, very accepting. My grandmother was very accepting. And of course, you know, they did the whole thing where they're like, we didn't see any signs. We didn't see any signs. And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
Grandma,
that's normal. Nobody
I
ever
go,
knows or
oh
sees
yeah,
anything.
because you weren't looking, were you? It's like I said, Grandma, do you remember in sixth grade when I told you I wanted to be so in sixth grade, I I really wanted to do something that was girly. And it was like the one time I broke out of the mold and kind of dropped some of the masking and kind of let that 6-year-old me out of the closet for a bit to have fun. I decided in June of that year that I wanted to dress up as something a girl would dress up as for Halloween.
Right.
And
You were
it, well,
planning ahead.
I'm gonna think of something. I'm gonna find some way to ask my grandmother because my grandma, my mom made all of her costumes. So the seamstress, tailor, you know, they make all that stuff. And so we're like, I was like, how am I gonna say this? How am I gonna say this? Thought all summer, got September. I'm like, okay, I got it. Called up my grandmother. I'm like, Grandma, I was thinking about what I want to do for Halloween. And she's like, okay, what are your ideas? I'm like, I want to be something that nobody will ever know it's me, which made sense for me because nobody liked me. And I was kind of hoping to just be somebody else. You know, that was a great part of Halloween.
Right.
And I said, you know, I want to be something no one will ever expect. And I said, she's like, well, what, like what? And I said, how about a princess or a fairy? or a fairy princess. That would work too. I wanted to wear a dress. I wanted something lacy and pink. I wanted the tiara. I wanted,
Right.
all of that. I wanted it. And, it's like, I remember saying it, I felt like I was going to pass out. I was just like, I was holding my breath so badly. And on the end of the phone, my grandma was quiet for a second. Says, "No, I don't think so." And I'm like, "No." And she says, "Well, how about
Oh.
this? How about this? Why don't we do something else?" She's like, "I think that's a little too much." And I'm like what? And she says, "Why don't we do a witch?" And I'm
Oh.
like,
Oh.
"I don't want to be an ugly witch. I want to be
Just
something pretty, but
a
I can't
fairy
say that."
princess.
Right. I mean, at sixth grade, I'm not dumb. I know how this works. That's probably the best offer I'm going to get. So I agree to
Uh-huh.
be a witch, and
Oh,
I end up getting, the cloak, the gown, the hat, the wig, and the fake nails. And my mom painted my face green with a nose.
but that's
And
not what you wanted.
I wore a pair of my grandmother's patent leather shoes from church. They had a
Okay.
buckle on them.
Oh, cool.
Same shoe size as my great grandmother.
Uh-huh.
And I was expecting to be very upset. I do have the autistic issue with, I don't like things on my face, but I was so excited that I didn't care. It was like I was okay with a full face of paint and this putty on my nose. Normally, I would have been crawling out of my skin, and I was okay with it. And there are pictures of me, and I was never the type to go out and do things that were going to get myself attention. I never did weird things. I never did silly things anymore. I was just terrified of any sort of attention.
Right.
In the photos of me for that Halloween, I was playing it up. I'm posing, cackling like a witch, and I'm doing all this stuff. We went trick-or-treating, and we went up to the very first house. Now, my grandmother had adopted two boys from New York City who were disabled, physically disabled, and they couldn't get up to the house. They were in wheelchairs. So I went up with two buckets, one for me and one for my Uncle James. But I have a bucket for each of us, and the old lady opens the door, trick or treat, and she's loving all the costumes, and she's complimenting everybody, and we're almost done. And I said, "Excuse me, I've got my uncle over there in the ghost costume. Can't make it up here. Can I get a candy from him too?" And she looks over and she sees he's the same age as me. And she's like, "You're such a sweet young lady. Oh,
Oh,
I'm thinking of
that must
others
have
like
felt
that.
so
You were
wonderful.
such a delightful young lady. Here you go." And she gave him an extra
Oh.
candy in both the buckets. And my feet did not touch the sidewalk for the rest of the night. I was on cloud nine, and that is gender euphoria.
Mm,
That's the one that no one ever talks about. We always talk about
right.
dysphoria and feeling that misery. This,
Right.
I felt so good that someone thought I was a girl.
That's gender
Everybody thought I was a
affirmation.
girl. I never felt so much joy in my life. And that was that one night was my happy thought for like the next 20 years.
Mhm.
Have you
I
felt that
was
since?
a few times. I'm getting
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
We even went to a dance, a Halloween dance in the next village over. And I went in, and the one friend I had from school was standing there, and I stand right next to him, like, "How you doing?" And he looks over, he's like, "I'm fine." Didn't recognize me. I was so excited. But I'm like, I told my grandmother about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah." And then my mom and my grandmother are like calling me at all hours, like saying, "Remember when this happened? And oh, this was a sign too." And it's wild. They don't see the signs. And then they're calling me with signs, sometimes that I
Uh,
didn't even notice.
uh-huh.
A big one that my mom said is that when I was a toddler in Montana, she had taken me to the grocery store, and she had me wearing a little football jersey. And at the time, I had super curly hair. It was like dirty blonde hair and curls. And she said, "I was getting something and you were in the car, and I turn around and an old lady walks up. She's, what a beautiful little girl. You're so cute. Look at these curls." And she's talking to me, and my mom turns around and she's all horrified. She's like, no, 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 this is my son. And she's like, but Lydia had no idea. And she's like, that wasn't even the only time that happened. It's like people seem to respond to me like a girl, even back then. She's
Right.
like, I dressed you like a boy, and they still thought you were a girl. And no one, that never happened to my brother or my sister. My brother was never mistaken for a girl. My sister was never mistaken for a boy.
Right.
So it's just,
That.
the number of things that were there that nobody noticed.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's like she was always there. The world knew she was there, and it was just a matter of accepting it myself and
Mhm.
finding the space, giving myself the space to actually be that, which was really,
As,
really, really tough
as
sometimes
an
to.
infant, you were actually putting out that energy.
Well, that's why I believe, it's like, I believe at age 6, I was that little girl because
Right.
I didn't realize there was a difference. And
Exactly.
it was the other kids in my class, and then my mother's brothers, once I got to a certain age, they would come over and they would start kind of enforcing those, guys are supposed to do this, don't
Mhm.
cry, don't do this, don't do that. and it
That's that's all the socialization that we get
and it
dumped on us.
and I was never able to make it work. I
Mhm.
tried so hard. I did not want to do this. I did not want to be trans, but the reality is we don't choose. The only thing that matters, the only thing that's different is what we choose to do about it. And I had a transition.
Mhm.
Um, I mentioned before, when we first started talking a few weeks ago, that one of the ways I used to describe being trans for people who are not trans, it's really, really very hard to describe what this experience is like to someone who
Mhm.
is cisgender. I'm sorry, that
Right.
is the word.
That is the
Mm-hmm.
word. Congruent with how they
I
feel about themselves and their
Yes,
assignment at birth.
why people get so triggered by a Latin word, I'll never understand. But I mean,
No.
it's like you don't have the capacity, you don't have the right place to be able to understand something. It's like trying to describe what a color is to somebody who has never been able to see in their life, born
Right.
blind. All you can do as someone who can see is describe colors to somebody
Mhm.
who does not have the ability to really experience it for themselves. They have
Mhm.
to take your word for it. Oh, you
Mhm.
say that red and green are different. Okay, well, I mean, this ball feels the same to me regardless of which color it is, but I will take your word for it that it exists. For me, being cisgender might as well be that red and green ball. I can't imagine being cisgender. I've never experienced that before. I can't
Right.
imagine not questioning or not imagining being the opposite sex. My
Mhm.
gender identity has always been there. So it's like, how do I describe this? And the way I figured it was this. Imagine getting a pebble in your shoe. All right. You walk around on your feet all day. You usually don't think about your feet. We don't think about them very much at all. Your brain is wired to not think about information coming in that's normal. Unless there's
Mhm.
something wrong, it's going to filter it out.
Mhm.
So when there's nothing in your shoe, you're not thinking about it. You don't even realize your feet are there most of the time. We don't. Then you get a rock in that shoe, or you stub your toe, or you get a little cut on your toe. And now you can't not think about it. It is just all you can think about. It is there, it is there, it is there. And nothing can distract you from it. You're going to be limping, you're going to be in pain. It's the most distracting thing in the world. Most people can't even think straight when they got something in the shoe. That's why, you got to stop and take that thing out. And being transgender is like having a pebble in your gender.
Mhm.
When you're cisgender, there's nothing wrong with your gender. Your gender is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And your brain's like, there's no problem here. I've got no reason to even acknowledge that this thing exists because there's
Exactly.
nothing wrong with it.
That's why people never question whether they're men or
Exactly.
women. Period.
Exactly. It's like because there's never been anything wrong with yours. So your
Mhm.
gender and your sex were congruent. I really prefer gender incongruity over transgender, like as a
I
description, because it
agree with
makes more
you.
sense, right? Because
I
it's my
absolutely agree.
right. It's just you don't feel that because your gender is where it's expected to be. Your gender and your sex
Right.
are meshed in one. Some people claim that they've never felt it at all. Other people, they just can't imagine ever thinking about it. And why
And
should
this is
you?
and this is one of the other things is in our culture, in our society, sex and gender are synonymous terms for most people.
Yeah, that's like calling all Kleenexes Kleenex instead of tissue
Mm-hmm.
paper. That's like calling, all toilet paper a Scott's roll. The
Mm-hmm.
fact of the matter is that the word becomes synonymous with something. I used to work on the Goodyear airship. When
Mm-hmm.
I worked on it, it was a blimp.
Right.
Now it's not a blimp. Goodyear does not fly a blimp anymore. They don't fly any Goodyear blimps. They're Goodyear airships because a blimp is different than an airship. Blimp has absolutely nothing inside the envelope that holds the shape except for the pressure of the helium inside. And an airship, a semi-rigid airship, has an actual frame on the inside. But to everybody else, it flies and it's got Goodyear on the side. It's a Goodyear blimp.
Right.
Sex and gender, it's the same thing. We simplify language because to most people it does not matter. But for a transgender person or someone dealing with trans people, my gender never lined up with my sex. There was always that
Exactly.
pebble in my shoe. There was always something wrong. And until
And
you
it's
take out that stone, you can't think straight. When I
it's
got
how we're
on,
born.
yeah, it's like when I got on the testosterone blockers. And that's when I started noticing there was always this fuzziness going on in my head. It was like a TV that was just between channels. I started the testosterone blockers. I noticed it got a little quieter in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Then I start the estrogen, got a little bit clearer, and all of a sudden I can really
Mm-hmm.
start thinking. It's like it's almost completely quiet. And then I got back on Ritalin, and I was like, oh wow, I can think straight. This is kind of a novelty. This is great. But it's like all of a sudden everything is working. I can function. I can have relationships. I can concentrate on my job. I can concentrate on my kids. I could not do that before because I was just in this constant state of misery, and no
Mm-hmm.
amount of talk therapy was going to fix it for me.
Exactly.
So it's like, yeah, it's like having a pebble in your gender. We feel it because there's something not quite right. Whereas cisgender people, you don't feel it because there's nothing in there. It's everything is working as it's supposed to, and there's no reason for your brain to even, put up a
Consider it.
flag. And yeah,
Yep.
I've had people say, well, what if men could wear dresses and no one would give you a hard time? What if names were not gendered? Would you still be trans? I'm like, well, yeah, I personally have physical dysphoria. My body being the wrong shape was a huge issue for me, regardless.
I know with
You
some
know,
people, when I say that gender is between the ears, sex is
yes.
between the legs, that's a new concept to them.
I also like the one where sex is who you go to bed with, gender is who
Right.
you go to bed as. And it's,
Exactly.
yeah, they're different things. They're describing different facets of life. And the reality is that human beings are complex. We're not simple
Mhm.
creatures. There
Right.
are so many different things. You can have two people taking the same exact medication for the same exact disease process and have two completely different reactions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there are so many ways things can turn out differently. Even identical twins are
Right.
not fully identical. Same
Mhm.
DNA, but there's still going to be differences. They're not the same exact person. To the untrained eye, you're going to see two of the same things, and most people have no reason to dive deeper. But for someone that knows what they're looking at, all those people knew that there was something going on with me. I go to
It's
the store now. I'm voice training. I'm not doing my voice right now, but
oh God, yeah.
it's like, you know, I go to the store and nobody looks at me twice.
Exactly.
People just, excuse me, miss, ma'am,
Right.
she needs help reaching that thing up on the top shelf. Nobody looks twice at me. When you're hiding something, especially for me, like I said, I have a real hard time with lying. I have a real hard time with making, with saying something I know is not true. It's like when you're constantly holding something back, people can tell. People can tell that
Yes.
you're not being dishonest. What is it? Why can't you look me in the eye? Why can't you? I just feel like you're hiding something. And that
Mm-hmm.
breeds a lot of distrust. People just pick up on something.
Yes.
That something for me is I was pretending to be a guy. I was trying
Right.
so hard. Like the way I was standing, the way I was speaking, all my mannerisms, everything was practiced. All my opinions
Right.
were rehearsed ahead of time.
Mhm.
Some of that might be the autism, but a lot of it was still just the me trying to show that I was a guy. And it
Right.
still does happen. It's very jarring when it does happen. When I go in to deal with mechanics
Oh.
at the auto body shop, because my wife still makes me do that because I am still a mechanic.
Mhm.
She wants me to deal with it. And it's really, really interesting once they start seeing a woman walk in.
Oh,
Things
yeah.
are different.
Or for my job, a lot of people, I'm not necessarily don't bring up my trans status. I just go in with my hair tied back and just go at it. And I will assume different mannerisms. My voice changes
Mhm.
entirely. And the way I speak, everything just changes. It's like
Yeah.
all of a sudden someone flipped a switch and I'm a different person.
Mhm.
And it's like I said, it's weird and people pick up on it and they don't like it.
Oh,
Whereas now I'm just being me. They're not picking up on something
right.
dishonest. I just
Mhm.
disappear
Right.
into the crowd, which that's all I've ever wanted my entire life was just to be one of a million. I want to be just another face in the crowd. As a child, I used to beg and plead whatever God or deity was up there. I don't care who. It's just make me normal, make me like everyone else, just make me not different. I don't want to be different.
Right.
And I was distraught. I was tormented by the entire thing. I just did not understand why I was different. And now I do. Now it's like, oh, it wasn't my ADD that was causing me the problems. And now I
Mhm.
also know, like I said, that the autism was in there as well. It's like, oh, that's why I didn't fully understand people with ADD either.
You wanted to disappear, but look at you now. I mean, you are out there, you are talking to people, you're sharing your story. What changed with that, Krystal, that you went from wanting to just hide and blend to actually being such a great spokesperson for issues?
Um, I mean, over the years, I found out that I was actually really good at teaching. I
Mhm.
love showing people things they didn't know. If I know a topic, I can find out 1,000 different ways to tell you how something works. And it's like I was really, really good tutor because of that. Like
Mhm.
classmates in all my schools, from nursing school to aircraft maintenance school, they were always like, I don't get this. And I would find 1,000 ways. And I was super patient. I could tell you in so many ways this concept, what Bernoulli's principle is, how the integumentary system is, what the sternocleidomastoid is, and why it helps you turn your head. All these things. And I found out that I was really good at it. But when I was getting ready to transition, I'm like, I just want to disappear. I want to transition. I want to move to a new place. I don't want anyone to know who I was. And a lot of trans people do that still. And once upon a time, that's how all of us had to do it.
That's
Um,
exactly right.
you had to do the 2 year, real life trial where you'd have to live as a woman, for trans women. I don't even know if trans men even had to deal with it or not, but you had to prove it. And I remember that was terrifying to me because I didn't want to stand out.
Mhm.
But I got about a year or so into transition and I was seeing more and more of the anti-trans stuff coming up. I picked a heck of a time to transition. Um, it's like I was seeing more and more anti-trans sentiment being stirred up. And I realized that people were looking for information because I'm online. I'm looking for information. I'm trying to find answers to questions. And I'm seeing more and more stuff being said by people who, when I would look into their profile, had nothing to do with being trans.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, I think the problem here is that not enough people understand. Human
Absolutely.
beings, when we don't understand something, we're afraid. Your first
Hmm.
instinct is fear. I don't understand it. It's not like me. It's dangerous. And
Hmm.
education is the one way that we can really fight against that. And I've started online with going in and saying, well, this is why this is happening. Here's my actual perspective on this as a person who's experienced it firsthand. As I started having more and more people coming in saying, thank you for explaining it the way you did. Thank you for your advice. I had one person, I was on Quora, which is a questions and answer site, and I answered questions. And this one lady came in, she was asking additional follow-up questions, and she's like, thank you so much. You really kind of helped me kind of find myself, and I really appreciate it. And then about 8 or 9 months later, I had this person text me on Facebook. saying, "Are you so and so from Quora?" And I'm like, I don't mix those two things. I don't have anything on that. Like, I don't use my real name. I don't use my photo. I do not mix those two things. How this person figure it out? And I'm like, maybe. And she's like, so nice to actually meet you. Thank you so much. She's transitioning. She's well into her transition
Oh.
now. She's found herself. And she's like, you've helped. You've helped so much. And it occurred to me, I'm like, I wanted to be a nurse. I like helping people. That was one of the things I was really good at, was people who need that help, who need someone to be there for them. And I still want to do that. It's so important to me. And I'm still looking into the possibility of getting my RN. But I figured the best thing that we can do as a community right now is be visible, because it's easy to demonize a group that you don't know anything about.
Exactly.
I can tell you all the lies. If you've never flown a helicopter before, I can tell you a whole bunch of funny, goofy things that sound like they make sense to make you afraid of getting into a helicopter if you know nothing about them. But
Right.
if you do know how helicopters work, you're going to say that's BS. I don't believe that, because I know, I've seen it myself. Well, the same thing goes for trans people. It's like, if you know a trans person, it's a lot harder to hate someone with
Exactly.
a face, a life.
Exactly.
I love my wife. I love my children. I help my community. My boss is one of my biggest advocates, because I work hard. I really work very hard at my job, and I've always put in 110%. I've never hurt a fly in my entire life. Even, when someone else is physically hurting me, I've never taken a swing back at somebody, and it's like, if all you know is all the lies that you're being fed to online by people who've never even met a trans person, why would you believe otherwise? And I just felt like the best thing I can do is put myself out there, answer the questions, to educate people, and also for a path for other trans people who are still figuring themselves out to follow. It's like, so many people, hey, I'm scared. I don't know if I should do this because I'm worried about X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, listen, here's the reality. And I don't pull punches. I don't make things up. I'm going to tell you exactly like it is, for better and worse. And I just feel like doing something like doing this is the absolute best thing we can do to try to make things better.
Right.
Being trans is just another medical condition, like so many other ones out there. And yeah, the treatment may seem weird and may not make sense to somebody who's not in the medical community, but that's all it is. I didn't choose this. I chose
I,
life.
I actually prefer to just say it's how we're born. Everybody goes through the same birth process, and there are so many variables in it. You and I were a variable in how our gender was formed in utero,
Yeah.
second and third trimesters of birth. That's it.
Yeah.
It's that
First,
simple.
second trimester, the body actually is
That's
forming the various sexual organs. And then the third trimester is when the brain begins to actually develop the pathways that will connect.
And there is a process in that third trimester where the brain is actually masculinized or feminized.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
we happen to get a very good dose of being feminine.
Yep.
Totally. And that's
Absolutely.
it.
Well, and one thing you talked about that you made very clear, people say, oh, it's a choice to be transgender. And you
No way.
very clearly illustrated how you fought that choice for years and
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And it was who you are that had to come out. Otherwise, the whole, things would have gone really, really bad, worse than they were.
And the percentage of trans people that actually need to medically transition is incredibly small. We're already like
Right.
roughly about 1% of the population. Of that 1%, I think they
Percent.
said that a fraction of that group actually even goes for medical transition. Like, I think it's only
Right.
12% of the trans population even gets surgery.
Yeah, you don't
It's
have to
not,
have surgery.
yeah, you
In
don't.
the last century, we were considered transsexuals, and that's a very, very small percentage of the overall transgender
Yes.
community.
Yeah.
A very
Yeah.
small percentage.
Yeah, there's so many different people that everybody has their own path. There's no one way. And
Right.
again, it's a language thing. People hear trans and they think, well, transgender, transition, it means the same thing. It's like, no, just like gender and sex are not the same thing.
Exactly.
Transgender does not mean transition. That
Mm-hmm.
trans is just that's your modifier.
Uh-huh.
Transgender, my gender is the opposite of what my sex is,
Mm-hmm.
and transition, I am moving somewhere else. And it's like I said, people who know trans people personally, they're the ones who are going to see it. My friends and family that are still here,
Mm-hmm.
they've seen the difference. They've seen the change. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
college right now, and I was a straight A student,
Mm-hmm.
3.86 GPA
Well, of
Mm-hmm.
in
course you are.
college
You're
for my
you're
for my
brilliant.
bachelor's because I get to be me, and now I'm
Right.
actually focused on my classes. I'm actually
Right.
focused on what I'm supposed to be, whereas before there was just this constant,
Hmm.
buzzing going on, and that buzzing is gone. So now I
Right.
can focus on having a job, providing for my family, making sure that my community gets what it needs. If I can do
Mm-hmm.
anything to help a neighbor, then I can do that. But when you're dealing with that dysphoria constantly and it's just not going away, it's very, very difficult to focus and say, this is what I need to do. So
Right.
it's just, one of those things where it's like, it really is just us finally getting to be who we really are. And
Right.
that's all there is to it. I don't care if anyone ever pays attention to me again. I would be very happy to disappear into the crowd, but I'm doing things like this. I want to do things like this because
Yeah.
I want us to be left alone. I want us to be safe. And in order to do that, we have to educate. We have to be out there.
Right.
And that's why we're
And
doing what we're doing, because it's so important to do that, to
yeah.
educate people so that they meet wonderful people like you and hear your stories, which is just been a fabulous story to share with us. Is there anything that surprises you about your life, Krystal?
Um, like I said, one of the big things that finding out who you really are and being like, I remember when I was young, I used to think, I wonder if the older version of me would like the younger version of me. I always used to think,
Mhm.
when I was like 12, I'm like, I wonder if the 30-year-old version of me would still like me, or would want to be my friend. And this weird thing to think of. But in the months leading up to my transition, I remember thinking to myself, I wonder what she'll be like. I wonder what things she'll like to do. Because, you hear a lot of different things like that they change, like, are they a different person entirely? How much is the same? And it's like, you really don't know. It's like this
Right.
big unknown thing because
Mm-hmm.
you're, like I said, you're unmasking, you're digging up something that's been buried for so long that you don't remember what it looks like. And this is
Right.
a problem that's more on the side of people who transition later in life, us translators. It's like when you're young and you get to transition as a teen, you don't deal with this as much, you know,
Absolutely.
because you're not building a life on top
Mm-hmm.
of this
Mm-hmm.
false version of you.
Exactly.
And I remember wondering what I'd be like and what would change. And now I'm 4.5 years in and I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, I'm a different person.
Mhm.
I'm a very different person than I was before. It's like the core of who I am is still the same, but I'm more willing to put myself out there. I am more willing to talk to people. I am more willing to get in there and socialize. And I want to be out and I want to be engaged with the community. And I'll do things that people that have known me all my life, like, never thought I'd see you doing something like this. And I'm like,
Exactly.
I feel good about myself. I feel good in my own skin. I'm gonna do it. So it's like I am doing things like I went to a pride prom. We had a pride prom last summer, and I went to my first two proms in high school. It was pulling teeth. The same friend I mentioned earlier dragged me unwillingly to each one, and I really was like I had lead feet. I couldn't even imagine getting up on the dance floor and doing anything. I just did not feel connected to my body. I was up there dancing. I
Yay.
don't dance. I was dancing and I didn't care. I was moving. I
Mhm.
was I was enjoying myself. I was wearing a dress and I'm thinking to myself, I feel good in the dress and I don't care what anybody thinks of it. And it's just
Right.
like
Exactly.
a lot of the things I used to do, I don't do anymore because I don't need them. And I'm learning like how much my personality was literally just created to survive as opposed
Exactly.
to
We
really being a
all
part of me.
we all live in survival mode.
Right. So it's like just finding out who I really am and noting the differences is like if you took me right now and me from say 5 full years ago, like this time back in 2021, you'd have two completely different people with different
Right.
opinions.
This doesn't
Yes.
stop. You keep
No.
unmasking, keep evolving, you keep learning more about yourself. I'm 11 years in and still changing.
It's like the strength, the
Oh God.
stamina are zip. It's like, okay,
Wait until you're 10 plus years on estrogen.
oh boy. It's something that now I've got to ask my son to open that jar of salsa for me because I can't get this thing. And I'm just like, this
Oh.
is weird. I used to be the one that did this, and now I seriously can't do it.
So what does your 42-year-old self think of your teenage self or 20-year-old self? You were worried about the other direction. What do you think as you look back?
Um,
Are you still
I
friends?
yeah, I had a conversation, and it's like I do this. I kind of I set out. I have a bunch of questions I want to ask my future self.
Hmm.
And so every once in a while I'll stop and I'll think about those questions and I'll answer them. Just it's just how I process my thoughts. And I remember thinking, I wonder what she'll think about me. And when I think about that version of myself, I know a lot of trans people, both men and women, tend to hate their pre-transition selves. They want to erase any and all aspect. They want to delete photos. They want to burn albums. They want to just nuke everything and just that version of them not exist. I've heard some really, aggressive language when referring to pre-transition selves. But for me, I'm like, I look at him like a different person.
Mm-hmm.
He was sad. He was depressed. He
Mm-hmm.
had put up with so much trauma over so many years and managed to survive
Mm-hmm.
that I cry when I think about it. I cry when I think about how much misery he went through and
Exactly.
how horrible he felt. And to be honest, I don't know how he survived. I don't know how he managed to go for 37 years, 38 years. Well, actually, I shouldn't say 38 years. I mean, because like I said, I got to be me up to age 6. But from age 6 to age 38,
Mm-hmm.
how he managed to survive, why he didn't give up, because so many people do. And there's a little bit of survivor's guilt kind of flowing through that. It's like, what was it about him that let him get through? But I want to cry when I think about him. He was worried that I would not like him, that I would hate him, like a lot of other trans people, like I said, say they hate that version of themselves. And I'm like, I don't hate him. If I had a chance to meet face to face with the 20-year-old version of me, the 30-year-old version of me, I would want to give him a hug and I'd want to say it's okay. You're gonna be all right. It's okay. You know, this is things are gonna get better. You're gonna get there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't hate you. I never hated you. I could not hate you. And I'm actually on the verge of tears right now because it's just the amount of misery and trauma that he dealt with
Exactly. I'm
was
very
just,
grateful to my pre-transition self
I
for
wouldn't have been
having
here if it wasn't for him.
survived and gotten through that
Yeah.
and not made me an
It's
alcoholic or a drug addict or killed
Oh
myself.
yeah. Oh yeah. And there were so many things that could have happened. I mean, he just kept going and just kept
Uh-huh.
going in spite of it all. And the deck was stacked against him. I mean,
Exactly.
my biological father left when I was 5. My stepdad stepped in soon after, but uh my dad was abusive. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather, my father's father, was very abusive, and he turns out that he wanted to get custody of me
Mm-hmm.
because he knew something was wrong. He felt something wasn't quite right with me.
Ooh.
And
That could have been very bad.
yes, had he managed to get custody, because he was pushing my biological father to get custody, God knows what would have happened to me. And I don't know if he would have survived that.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. And
Yeah.
it was one of those things where I was having temper issues at the time. I was blowing up very easily. I didn't know why. I was always angry and always on such a short fuse. And now I know it's like, well, geez, you're neurodivergent, you're trans, and you're trying to deal with all of that in a small town that doesn't understand anything beyond 1952.
Right.
It's just he managed to control his temper long enough to survive that.
Mm-hmm.
And had he not done so, we would never have had a chance to be the real us and to actually experience life. And it's like, I'm 42 years old and I get to be me.
And it's
I
only
get
going to get better.
it exactly. It's going to get better. My sister already says they look like a 30-year-old version of my mom, which I'm just absolutely in love with because I still think my mom's one of the prettiest women in the world. But
Okay.
Nice.
That's great.
but yeah, it's just getting to a point where I can say, yeah, you know what, we're gonna make it. You're gonna make it. It's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're here because of you. It's a very, very strange experience to have for being when you're, trans and you've transitioned later in life because you really do have these two different versions of your life.
Oh,
And it's
boy.
finding out where does this one end and this one begin? And then finding out that like everything else in life, it's a spectrum. There's that thing again. It's a
Mhm.
spectrum. It's like
Right.
bits and pieces, but aspects of that spectrum, you don't need that. It doesn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have all that other stuff in the way, you can actually work with with what you've got left. And that's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we're
You
so
know,
grateful that you were willing to share that with us and that we're sharing it with
uh,
our audience. Krystal, what a wonderful story you had to share with us today. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience before I ask for your contact information or before we close this out?
yeah, I mean, just come at the trans topic with an open mind and a willingness to learn. We're people just like everyone else. We want the same things and, try to react with compassion and not fear. Everything in life would be better if we try to be compassionate and not let fear be the first reaction we have to things. So,
And you talk about, ignorance being part of the fear response. And so knowledge and education is what we need to counteract that.
exactly.
So thank you for that. Wendy, anything else today?
Well, the knowledge and education is very important. And when I transitioned at age 67, my first week or two, I had decided I was just going to be stealth and just blend into society as any other woman. That lasted 2 weeks because I found out nobody understood me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I made it my mission, and that was it. I've been talking to people ever since.
Yeah.
So
Well,
thank
Gotta be
you for
brave.
doing the same thing. More of us need to do that if we're capable and if we're willing to and open to doing it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And
Oh, yeah.
this
I'm
is
so
something
grateful
that
for you to
means,
come today.
yeah, it means a lot to me. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Likewise, Krystal.
so Krystal, we'll put your Instagram handle in the show notes. Anything else that you want people to contact you, where they can find you, or?
Instagram works great. And, I'm trying to get in there more often and keep up with it. And yeah, that's a good spot.
Okay, we will put that in the show notes. So, Krystal, thank you so much for trusting us with your story and for the clarity that you bring to the topic that so many people don't really understand, yet they're talking about it all the time. So, yeah, I keep thinking about your pebble in the shoe analogy and the color analogy.
Mhm.
That makes so much sense as a way to explain it to people like me who have no way of understanding, really, really understanding what it's like. So you're explaining it in human terms. And I love that piece of it from what you shared today.
Yeah, it's like that one voice. It's like in anything that you do, a subject matter expert is going to be the best person to go to. And it's like, it
Right.
just feels like today, the one voice, the one group that is least included in the topic of anything to do with being trans is the trans community.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, and you talked about affirming your gender and that it was a relief. The choice was not whether or not you were a woman. The choice was what to do about it, and that it was such a relief that you did that, and that you can finally think straight and breathe and live as the person who you really are.
I have to wake up in my skin every day. I have to look in that mirror and I have to say, that's what I'm wearing out in the world. And am I okay with that? And the reality is, I have to wake up with that every day. Other people don't.
Yeah.
And it was a decision like, I am important. Like, my happiness does matter. I really do have to advocate for myself. And that was the turning point.
Right.
I am
so
worth it.
cool. Well, in your whole life, your work ethic, your curiosity, how much you love your family, your creativity, all of these things that come together, and your willingness to keep learning and to keep finding out about yourself. It reminds us that being human doesn't just come in one little box or one approved model, that we're all human. And that's what you've shared so beautifully with us today is your humanity and helping us share that with others so that we can educate some of these people who don't know what they're talking about. So, and thank you to our listeners, especially those who consider yourselves allies or who want to understand more. If this episode shifted your thinking even a little bit, share it, send it to a friend. Use Krystal's Pebble analogy or her color analogy the next time somebody says, "Oh, I don't get it." Okay, as Krystal said, the enemy of fear is understanding, and understanding starts with listening. So, Krystal, we're cheering you on everything that is wonderful ahead, that you have a wonderful life with your wife, the best that can be, and with your children. And we're grateful that you chose visibility, not for attention, but for impact, which you're making. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today for Demystifying the Transgender Journey. And if this episode meant something to you, please like, subscribe, share. Those are small actions that help these stories reach people so that we can build our audience and that we can get to more people. So thank you for joining us. Remember, until next time, stay curious and stay kind. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Demystifying the Transgender Journey. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of our fascinating interviews. You can also find more information on our website, thetransgenderjourney.com. So until next time, stay curious and stay kind.